Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whisky podcast. I'm joined today.
You do sound terrible.
I do. I sound terrible.
Not to interrupt, but holy moly. I didn't think you were going to sound like that.
It's not good. I've been coughing and coughing. So I took I wouldn't say a bunch, but I took sleep aids.
A bunch of medications?
Well, I took sleep aids last night just to get me to sleep because I was coughing. And I slept through the night, and then when I woke up this morning, it was just pure nonsense, just uncontrollable coughing.
Wow, this is hashtag please consume all sleep aids responsibly.
But I double-checked COVID, so I started feeling ill the other day, took a COVID test, and then I waited another couple days, took another COVID test just to see if that was it. Yeah. And I don't have a fever. I'm just clogged up.
Yeah.
I need Roto-Rooter, Jason.
Yeah. Well, let's see how far we get. You've got a glass of water there to keep the throat refreshed.
I did. I drank it all. And it's empty. It's empty. I drank it all.
No tea with honey over there?
No, there is no tea with honey.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I could use some tea I could use a little hot toddy, Jason. Do you ever do that?
I don't think the drugs that you're on should be partnered with whiskey right now, to be perfectly honest.
Do you ever do
hashtag please combine. Mucinex is a brand name. I'm not going to say Mucinex. Cut that part.
Do you ever do a hot toddy when you're sick?
Hell no.
Wow. Talk about a declarative statement.
Hell to the no.
Why? What? So what? So A, why do you not? And B, why not?
Because do you know what's much, much, much easier than making a hot toddy and has the exact same effect?
A butt chug. A vodka suppository?
No, I don't use sherry. That doesn't make any sense. No, I pour a dram of whiskey and I drink it. Done. Over. Finito bonito. Easy peasy.
Wow. You just got so, obstinately Scottish just there. No, I don't do it. I just drink a whiskey.
Yeah. Hot toddy's what you give the kids when they're sick. Christ. It's not what grown men are taking. Christ.
So are you suggesting I have a pour of whiskey?
Absolutely. You just took medications.
But what do we pour?
See, that's what my approach is. I don't take the over-the-counter medications. I just pour the whiskey.
Have you considered mixing?
I assume that's what you meant by hot toddy.
I feel as if we need to pour a little something to help me through this.
All right. What's your highest ABV on your shelves? Because if you're going to drink with over-the-counter medications, you need to make sure it's with high ABV stuff.
I have a bottle of the Figeal 7-year-old Octomore X4 plus 7. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Should I pour that?
Get it poured.
Oh my gosh, Jason. This is going to happen. Here it comes.
You're going to fall asleep during this recording. Nothing is more certain.
I just need to grab a glass.
As I watch Joshua pull what's almost clear liquid from his shelves and then wander off camera to find a glass somewhere in his house on a cul-de-sac somewhere in upstate Connecticut. Joshua has just reiterated upstate Connecticut from off camera and off mic.
Connecticut? There's no such thing as upstate Connecticut, especially when I'm on the shoreline. I'm like, if anything, I'm downstate Connecticut.
I thought you'd appreciate that.
So,
did give me a good chuckle.
So this is the 2014 Figeal bottling, and you'll see. Look how much I've drunk of this.
Half?
Yeah, over the past.
For the benefit of our viewers.
Over the past 8 years, I've drunk half this bottle, and it is. You ready for the ABV, Jason, and listeners?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, this actually isn't the highest ABV I have, but it's the closest to me. 69.5%.
69.5?
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't know what that is in proof. You could do the math if... Sound like
I don't think we need to, do we?
No.
I don't think we need to.
So what are you pouring?
Well, I'm actually going to... On my desk here, I've got a little half sample remaining. This came in from Elijah. And this is Springbank Local Barley 10-year-old.
All right.
This is the sherry version at 55.6%.
You sent me a sample of that too.
Yeah. So I am pouring the second half of this to to get it finished. You know, that's how we deal with whiskey. It's just to get it finished, just to get it off my desk.
All right.
As my move to my garden office continues to move, I think the year 2030 will be here. I think my 12-year-old will have moved out of home and gotten married and started a family by the time I actually get into my garden office. So he checks in every day, bless him, and I disappoint him every day, bless him.
Yeah, I mean, you disappoint me every day as well.
Checks out, man. Checks out. Thank goodness it never happens in the opposite direction.
Thank goodness indeed. So we've talked about how I'm doing. I'm sick. I'm drinking quadruple distilled Octomore 7 years in a sherry cask.
Well, bless everybody. We're approaching a Christmas Carol time of year, right? Bless everybody.
So the listeners know how I'm doing. How's
yes.
Jason, aside from the fact that you can't seem to move out of your office room and into your garden the fact that you have a garden office is something in and of itself, but...
Right now I have nothing, Josh. Nothing. But one day I will have all the things.
So besides the fact that you can't move into your garden office yet, how's Jason doing?
I'm tickety-boo. I'm A-okay. I was telling you before we came on the recording here that if anybody paid attention to the hurricane that was hitting Florida this week of recording, so the week of what was Monday the 7th, so the week of November 7th, there was a hurricane hitting Florida, and it made landfall and immediately became a tropical storm. Immediately. Yeah,
they were really expecting this one to be a big one, and it just fizzled out, didn't it?
Yep. Soon as it hit the land mass, it calmed down. And it's taken a couple of days, but we now have that tropical storm over us. So we are expecting 3 to 4 inches of rain over the next 24 hours.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah. Our fall has gotten very wet. All the leaves that are on the ground are going to get very sodden. And I'm sure we'll see some flooding along the way. So there you go. So it's dreich. So this idea of you being sick and pouring something and me being tickety-boo, but the weather being dreich and having a wee spring bank in the glass. This is good. This is the way it should be. With weather on our minds...
Oh, I know where you're going with this because you're a smart man.
Yeah, that was one of the opening conversations with Dave Broom when we met him at Jack Rose in Washington, D.C. The other weekend. No bones about it. We met him on Saturday, November 5th. D.C. was the last stop on his Whistle Stop book tour. And not only was it quick, he was on a train. So he was Boston.
Yeah. Oh, he's Boston, then he was New York, and then he was
New
DC.
York, and then DC. And we saw him on the final day.
Do you remember it being the 5th of November because you're taught to remember the 5th of November?
Yep. Could not find a guy to burn, unfortunately. The guy is what goes on top of your bonfire. Yes.
Yeah, I did see you trying to create an effigy.
Yeah, it doesn't go over well in 2022. Burning effigies is significantly out of fashion.
You hear the sirens, they're coming closer. Cops pull up. Sir, what are you doing? Just burning an effigy, sir. Just burning an effigy.
Yeah, remember, it's the 5th of November. Come on, dude. Get with the program here. So it was very hot, very sunny, and it was lovely. It was weird. We kept mentioning many times that it was weird to be as warm as it was. 25 centigrade for our international listeners, 77, 78 Fahrenheit on the day, on the 5th of November. So, yeah, my current temperature is 59, which is somewhere around, 15 centigrade, even on
15, 16?
Streak. Well, 16 is 61.
16 is 61.
So 59 is never going to be 16. So
but it's
15.
going to get you close.
15, I feel like, would get you kind of accurate, though, whereas 16
is 15
close.
59?
More or less. It's like 59.7 or something like that.
Yeah, see, I think it's like 15 point something.
Yeah, it's certainly closer than 16 being 61. Anyway. Is that whiskey helping?
It's painful. Oh my gosh, I haven't touched this in a while. And
is 69 a bit much?
Well, sometimes it is a bit much.
Oh my God. That's like being in the room with my 12-year-old and my 15-year-old. Their absolute hands down favorite number all the time is 69. Constantly. Oh my God. And you just gave the same response they do.
You got to take a pause. You got to pour a little for your homies in lockdown when that gets mentioned. Am I right?
So it's a little bit much, it's a little bit strong.
Yeah, it's interesting. It still has that Octomore peak coming through, but it's much brighter, and it's I would argue it's less flavorful from a spirit perspective. Some of the sherry comes through, which is kind of nice, but it's I don't know that 7 years in sherry is where it's at. I'm really curious to know if they kept any of this back to see if it got a bit older, because I feel as if there's a marriage here. You know what? I feel as if where the spirit is in conjunction with the wood, I feel like they're still figuring the relationship out. Right? It's still a young relationship. They haven't melded yet. They haven't finished one another's sentences just yet. But I see it. They
haven't bickered over 15, 16 centigrade being close to 59, 61 Fahrenheit.
That's why I think it's like 15 point something, right?
I'm so glad we can revisit this. Brought up by me. So do you remember why they moved to X4? Why distill 4 times? I'm hearing you saying, the spirit itself is lacking flavor here. Well, if you distill it 4 times, you are essentially going to be removing flavor. Do you remember why they went down that path?
I don't remember why they went down this path. It was at a time when Jim McEwen was at the helm, and it seemed to be one of those many things where it was like, whew, what's Jim up to this year? And I just wonder if it was just yet another thing he wanted to play around with, right? If he's creating, the whiskey made from the most heavily peated barley there is, he's a guy that liked to dabble a bit. What does triple distilled look like? What does quadruple distilled look like? So, for instance, when I think back to our Great Isle Swim bottling, my understanding is that the Bruichladdich component to that was a triple distilled product that went into the Great Isle Swim bottling. We've talked about that over the years. And so it seemed to be just another one of these unusual experiments that Jim did. I don't know if he had a plan for it, but it was like, Bruichladdich is being rebirthed. What's it going to look like? Do we need to play around?
Yeah, it's interesting you say, I wonder if they held any back. I guarantee you there is X4 Octomore in one of their many warehouses.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think they've definitely, and especially listening to you saying, this marriage isn't complete yet. They're not completing each other's sentences. makes me wonder if they've got other experiments with the X4 that they continue to watch.
And just imagine what this was like when the bottle was freshly opened. You know, here we are, the bottle was at 50% filled from 2014, so there's been plenty of oxidation to kind of calm it down, even it out a bit, and it's clear that, you know, it's still very volatile.
Does it feel a little one note?
It feels two note.
What are those two?
So it's sherry and peated barley living like, I feel as if they're across the border from one another. Like one is the Republic of Ireland and one is Northern Ireland, and there's a border going on there, right? Like that's how I feel. There's no bombs being tossed here or there, but I feel as if they're about to get along, and there may be a
piece of cord is in the works.
I think a piece of cord is in the works. Yep.
Well, that sounds like a happy ending for all.
Wouldn't we all benefit from a happy ending?
Well, wait till my 12-year-old and 15-year-old work out those words. That'll be the next thing that we'll hear constantly in the house. Speaking of a happy ending, how about our happiness and our eagerness to interview Dave Broom in person in Washington, D.C. He came down from New York on train. You drove in from Connecticut. Mm-hmm. I drove
upstate Connecticut.
Upstate Connecticut. It's a long way to come. Should I say that and continue the ribald humor that we have between the lines of this episode?
All right.
No, I don't have to.
I don't know where you're going with that comment. Like, it was a long way to drive. I get that. I was able to go much farther when I was younger.
Oh, no. Please stop. Please stop.
Just continue.
Stop.
So I drove from Connecticut. You drove up from Virginia.
Upstate Virginia.
Upstate Virginia.
And we got to see him in person. You and I were just saying in a recent episode, we're going out and we're doing these solo interviews. Mm-hmm. And even doing solo is just lovely to see people again and spend time with people again. You and I having a chance to meet in DC, spend time with Dave, Bill Thomas, Roberto, over there, see the team at Jack Rose was lovely again. It just felt, it didn't even feel, it was a good day. It was a good whiskey day.
That it was, yeah.
And what a lot of fun. And you'll hear us in this interview talk to Dave about his book, A Sense of Place, which comes highly, highly recommended. Mm-hmm. You'll hear us talk about the tasting he is about to conduct on that Saturday afternoon. And we did get to partake in that tasting and hear him present on A Sense of Place. And that was really, really cool. I think you and I talked about this afterwards. You have in the past attended a Dave Broom presentation, and I never have.
Yeah, that's right. I was in Scotland must have been May of 2015, and we were up in Speyside, and we had a free day, and there was a Dave Broom event happening during the Spirit of Speyside Festival. So I went there with two people from the distributor that we used to work with in New York. And it was brilliant, right? That was my first time seeing him. And he's one of those, and you and I have talked about this a bit before, right? There's certain whiskey people that you get a little nervous around. And I was definitely a little nervous around him because he's a great writer. He's a great thinker when it comes to whiskey. You know, as we'll talk about in this interview, you know, he has a way of thinking about whiskey and writing about whiskey in new and innovative ways that I think are sometimes unexpected. And so getting to see him for that first time was really nice. And then here we are 7 years later getting to see him present once again. And you know, he was Dave Broom once again, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm going to tie two threads together, and then I'm going to throw this over to us with Dave.
Beauty.
Previously, in this introduction, you have mentioned the Great Isle of Swim.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And our dear friend Michael Nolan wrote in, knowing that we were going to be interviewing Dave.
That's right.
To say an absolute cherished memory that Michael Nolan has is the group of us, the Great Isle of Swim group, being on the ferry heading off to Ireland. You mentioned Ireland earlier as well. Heading off to Islay, and us sharing that ferry with Dave Broom and his wife and daughter.
His daughter, yeah.
And Dave Broom, even though he was on family vacation, made all the time in the world for the group. And Michael, don't know why I almost called him Mike. I've never called him Mike in my life.
Mikey?
Michael. Mikey Noli up in upstate Illinois.
Well, he's Irish too, right? So that's another reason why you mentioned Ireland.
I feel like I'm on medication this morning. So the fact that Michael had written in to say that was so kind of him, so sweet of him, and being aware that it was family vacation, and we didn't want to take up a lot of his time. We certainly didn't want to bombard him, but we were whiskey geeks, and being on that ferry with Dave Broom was kind of a big fucking deal, and the fact that he played into that and had a good time with us. So I think that speaks to the man's character, and it gives all the reason in the world why we really cherish him. And here he is. Dave Broom, did you expect your November trip to the East Coast to be in the 70s/20s centigrade?
No. I left the UK and it was freezing, and I brought a big Filson jacket with me, and I've just been sweating ever since.
So it's been true in Boston, true in New York, and now true in DC.
Yeah, t-shirt weather. It's enough to make a Scotsman melt.
Are you regretting the long hair and the beard in this temperature?
Never.
How long have you had your long hair and beard? I feel like that's been a signature of yours.
I've had the long hair, quite a long time. And the beard, I can't really remember. Yeah, it must be quite a long time. Oh. It's gone through various configurations, though, the beard. Right. And over COVID, I just let it go, like yourself. Back in the day. Yeah.
It seems like you have trimmed the hair and the beard. Was that for this trip, or that was in general?
It was getting a bit too Grizzly Adams, really. So, but excellent. Yeah, I like the way that this conversation's already started about male grooming rather than anything else.
Manscaping.
It's all about the manscaping. Dave Broom presents manscaping.
So given these types of temperatures, and you're here on a whiskey trip, does it get in the way? Has it gotten in the way? Are you in air-conditioned buildings and it hasn't really made that much of a difference?
It's not really got in the way at all. I find the air conditioning a bit too brutal, so it's actually... I think we did a gig in New York, and it was a great gig. It was actually warmer outside than it was inside.
Oh, wow.
It's been absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine.
That's exactly how we run our house.
Yeah.
And there are times I will use the car to go pick up my boys from somewhere, and I'll pick them up without the air conditioning running because I just like getting a heat in my bones. And they're always like, Dad, it's roasting in the car. And I always say, yeah, but it's freezing in the house. They're like, no, that's the way it should be. So we're raising good Americans.
Yeah. Before you go into your deluge of questions.
I only have one question. Dave, tell me everything.
But obviously you're on a book tour for A Sense of Place. What does that look like for you when you're doing your tours? How long do they typically last? Is all of that up to you, or do you rely on your publisher to set up things and sort of bounce you around from spot to spot?
Yeah, I mean, this has been pretty brief, simply because of other stuff that I'm doing back in UK, but I wanted to get over, as the book came out. So this is probably a wee bit tighter than it usually is. So I've been doing more in the UK, but I might come back next year to do West Coast or wherever. And it's usually the publisher organising over here, and this time brilliantly with Scotch Malt. So they've helped out, which is magnificent. And over in the UK, some booksellers that we've always kind of worked with, who've got really good programs going on. And then there's a couple of other gigs that I've kind of fitted in with friends, who are running bars or venues or whatever. So it's been a bit of everything, actually.
Because you've been writing for some time, and as bookstores, especially independent bookstores, continue to go away. Now, granted, I'm talking the U.S. and maybe things are different in UK and Europe. But Jason's shaking his head. No, perfect for a podcast. But as these independent bookstores go away, did you find yourself early days hitting those type of bookshops, or was it always in bars and restaurants and clubs and things like that?
In the UK, actually, the independent book, the independent book, category, that's the best word, has been going really well, actually. They've seen a considerable uptick, actually.
Right.
So they were allowed to stay open during COVID, or they'd be deliver books or whatever. Yeah. So that's been good and that's been positive. So I suppose in the UK it's been a split. And because of the health of that sector, it's great to continue to promote it. Over here, it's always been more whiskey clubs or whiskey venues or whatever. So I think it's just the nature of the market.
Sure.
Which are slightly different. So
we can't order a visit from you on Amazon.
That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
FedEx had him trim his beard for workplace standards on the deliveries he's making of his book. Just talking about venues, actually, just to set the scene here, we are sitting on the second floor of Jack Rose Dining Saloon in DC. The roof is open because of the weather conditions that we've talked about on November 5th.
Indeed.
If you are hearing car horns, if you are hearing any kind of sirens while listening to this is the real deal. This is what we're experiencing as we're sitting here. So.
Indeed.
Yeah. And it's great to be back at Jack Rose, which is just, a shrine to whiskey.
Absolutely.
What Bill and the guys have done to keep this place going through COVID is nothing short of remarkable. So, I've always had great gigs here. So, delighted to be back.
Yeah, any listener interested, our Jack Rose, Bill Thomas episode is one of the most complimented episodes we've got, where Bill Thomas had such an honest conversation about what it took to keep this place open and things that he did and the way he supported his staff. And so I was always a fan of Bill Thomas and the team. I'm even more so a fan.
No, great guy.
Now he's a great guy, is correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah.
I was just...
That's it. You finished now, haven't
you?
History has shown that's the last thing you're going to be saying. Yeah.
I just feel like I have to,
Get in there
quick. I was just curious, right? There's, I think about authors or musicians or comedians that comedian puts a new hour together and he or she has to go on the road, and what is that like? Yeah. And as you're putting out new book after new book, what is that life like? Not just from a venue standpoint, but from, like you had mentioned earlier, you decided, I'm going to travel the U.S. by train.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Which is just a lovely way to see the country.
Yeah.
I just found that great. And in many ways, I'm doing a couple of gigs with musicians over in the UK, and I think it's simply because of the monolith that is Amazon. I think it's even more important to actually get out there and do a lot of these gigs, just so that people know, because otherwise you might not hear about the book. So I would say certainly back home, UK wise, I'm probably doing more gigs than I have in the past. But that's great, because just getting out and meeting people and trying new things, and it's not just a whiskey tasting; it can be with music, or whatever. So
what music, like jazz or let's hear about that.
Right, okay. So did one 2 weeks ago. I think it's 2 weeks ago. I can't remember where I am now. A friend of mine's got a brewery come record shop.
Yes,
in Fife.
Awesome.
So he asked me to come and do a DJ set playing skronky jazz, which I did, and it was on Halloween as well. Well, it was a Halloween celebration, so everybody's in fancy dress, and then do a talk about whiskey. And he was playing records, and there was also this guy, King Creosote, who's quite a famous kind of Scottish musician. Yeah. So Kenny did a set as well. So it was this bizarre mashup of music and talk and whiskey and dancing and skronky jazz. And then I'm doing one in a couple of weeks' time in London with a musician friend called Loman Campbell, who builds synthesizers. And he's got this machine where you kind of dial in words, and the words will be converted into music. So we're taking a paragraph from each chapter in the book, and that is then going to generate music unique to that particular chapter, and then loop that and do various things. So it could be amazing. It could be an utter disaster. I'll let you know when the album's coming out. You know? But it then, because we're doing this audiophile bar in London, it's going to get a different audience. So it's not going to be the whiskey geeks. It's going to be the folk who are really into the music, who then might come out and go, oh, actually whiskey's for me as well. So I think that's another element of it. It's kind of going out with the little kind of the whiskey world and trying to engage people from all different areas that they're interested in. And in some ways that's what I'm trying to do I was trying to do with the book as well. So yes, it is a book about whiskey, but it's a book about Scotland, and it's a travel book, and it's about it's about history, it's about nature, it's about blah blah blah. So it can hit different people in different ways.
The last time we spoke to you about Dave Broom, not about Michael Jackson, you were talking about whiskey tastings really needing to be rethought, re-examined, redone, and this idea of getting people in a room, probably 30 people in a room, pouring them 6 drams and then talking about them. You thought maybe gone the way of the dinosaur, even though a lot of us still do that. That's exactly how we do it. Yeah. Listening to you talking about this music and getting this additional audience really has a strong echo to what you are, and I know you weren't just saying it 2 years ago, but you've been saying for a while, is how do we get those feelers out and bring people in? Yeah. Do you find the whiskey resonates in an instance like that? Do you find the music resonates, but the whiskey is now a seed has been sown in somebody's brain? How do you see that playing out with those audiences?
I think trying to bring in new people by offering them something else other than just whiskey. You know, they will be coming in because of whatever the other thing is, and it could be food, and it could be music, it could be photography. You know, it could be something else. So I think that's an excellent way to try and engage people. You know, to try and find. You know, I think we've probably touched on this in the past. A lot of it's about confidence. You know, so a lot of people are still scared about whiskey. You know, it's growing, but they lack the confidence to be able to make that decision as to what whiskey they want to have, even though they feel that they have to pass an exam. You know, because they don't understand what to say. Yeah. But you know, they're quite happy to have an opinion about a pizza. You know, so you know they therefore they know how to taste kind of thing. But if you can then find their comfort zone and talk to them when they're in their comfort zone, whatever that is, then that is a really good way to start to bring them in. We've been, and this is kind of we in general, this kind of whiskey industry thing, very good at standing at the opening of the tent, going, "Come in, folks." But actually, we should be stepping through and actually approaching them in their worlds and bringing them in. So, and it's another reason for writing the book in the way it has been written, which is looking at that big picture and seeing how whiskey does ripple out and where all those connections are. You know, whether they're with, you know, farmers or foresters or writers or musicians or whatever. So, when you look at whiskey in that way, rather than just being a product made in a certain way, aged in a certain type of cask, which is fascinating for us because we're geeks. But it's actually not that fascinating for most people, you know. But a lot of the other stuff is, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, talking to brand ambassadors and sort of seeing the way that they now are engaging people. And again, I think especially in the UK, for less familiar with what's happening over here, obviously, that whole presentation mode, which used to be now pick up the glass and, you know, put your nose in the glass, which, you know, everybody knows how to smell, you know. You know, we've been doing it since they were babies, you know. They don't really need to be talked through it. And it's much more about storytelling, you know. It's more about that the backstory in the whiskies, you know. So when I'm talking about the book, we've got half a dozen whiskies or so to taste with it. But it's not really a tasting of the whiskey. The whiskey kind of helps tell the story or move the story along, move the narrative along. And I'm not the only person doing it. I haven't discovered something weird and that nobody else is trying.
Sure.
I think this is now part and parcel of what, you know, whiskey education is all about, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
On that very topic, do you think actively and act purposefully when it comes to gatekeeping? Because I know in having many conversations with Jess Lomas, our global sales manager in Glasgow, one of the things for her is who's inviting people into the tent that you're talking about. And in observing you and talking to you, you're talking about, it doesn't have to be my tent. Like, I can go and walk into somebody else's tent and have a chat with them where they are. Yeah. Is that conscious for you? Is that purposeful to you? Do you spend time thinking about that aspect of whiskey or of our industry?
I think it happens. I don't know if I consciously think. I don't kind of sit down and make a list. I don't think. But what's been interesting with the tour that I've been doing in the UK is, you know, doing a couple of literary festivals and seeing who comes along to those. Yeah. And I did one in Braemar, and, you know, there were folk from Lochnagar Distillery, so there was whiskey geeks in there, but there was also people who were at the literary festival because they'd bought the ticket to that and they didn't necessarily know anything about whiskey, but were interested. All of a sudden they were interested because, you know, it was something different.
Yeah.
You know, and that's I think that's kind of the role of the literary festival in many ways, or that great independent bookseller who can then pitch it in the right way, you know, to be able to go, you know, yes, there's going to be whiskies here, but actually there is also this big picture. So I don't think it's necessarily conscious. I don't kind of deliberately try and target people, but it's hugely rewarding and exciting when you find that little avenue, that little pathway that you can begin to get into, you know, people and convince them that this thing that they were perhaps scared about, they actually love. And I find that, I mean, time and time again, just not even with this, but, you know, the number of people that come up after a tasting, because, you know, quite often be a highball at some point in the tasting, and the number of people who come up afterwards, and they've probably been brought along by their partner, and they go, I've never liked whiskey before, but oh my goodness, that highball was delicious.
Wow.
You know, boom, great, job done. And there's another convert. There's somebody who will now go and try whiskey. They might not become a geek, but
sure.
you know, they're now, you know, walking towards the tent. You know,
that's really great to hear, because one of the things I thought about, you know, we have a local bookstore just a town away from me, and we've got wonderful authors coming through. I think it's okay. Like this, Jason? Just potato. Okay. But, you know, the people who are going to this local bookstore to see their favorite author is reading to the choir, preaching to the choir. So, you know, how much of what you do is bringing in new people into whiskey, and how much of it do you think is preaching to that whiskey choir, the already converted?
I mean, the vast majority of people who'll be coming will you know, it will be kind of preaching to the choir to some extent, but hopefully the preaching won't be too preachy, and will kind of open up new ways of thinking about whiskey, because that's it kind of spins back to that that old way of kind of whiskey tasting. I'm getting increasingly bored actually. Going back to that thing. I may even say it this afternoon when I'm doing it. My opinion of that whiskey, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing to you, because that whiskey's yours. So we can all help you. We can have a conversation about it. But I can't tell you what you're experiencing when you taste that whiskey, because all you can do as a presenter is hold up a mirror to the person tasting it and going, it's yours now. Yeah. And the conversation that comes from that is actually really fascinating. It's an interesting way of trying to go about it. It seems like I'm just copping out. I'm not even tell you what it tastes like. I'm too bored. But it's not. It's trying to engage that conversation. It's trying to say, I can tell you. I'll describe it if you want, but don't take that as gospel. Essentially, going back to the preachy thing. Yeah, it's not gospel.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no bloody scores.
Say that again. I didn't actually hear it over the car starting up outside.
Whoa, that's an elephant farting. The circus is in town. No scores.
No scores. There you go.
No scores.
This past September, I went up to Isle of Rasay Distillery, which was wonderful. And we all landed in Glasgow, and then we went straight to Mull of Kintyre. We had a day in Ireland, then we get off Ireland, we went straight up the west coast of Scotland. Nice. And there's something so very different about the roads on the west coast of Scotland. Yes. And there's a different feel on the west coast. And if I step back and I think of the distilleries there, Ardnamurchan, Isle of Rasay, right? Talisker, granted that's Skye, but it's west, right? And they all have this particular style. And I wouldn't say I've scoffed at the idea of regionality, but there's a connection to those distilleries, and the West Coast distilleries in particular, that I've started to pay attention to more. And I feel as if you talk about that a bit, and I wonder if you could maybe give us your thoughts on that idea.
Yeah, sure. I mean, start with the roads. It's we went to Knocknain on Morven, which is a West Coast distillery. Yeah. And as a crow flies, I think it's about 6 miles from Ardnamurchan.
Yeah.
And it takes about 2 hours to get there from A to B by road.
It's just like right north of Mull, right?
Yeah, it's right opposite Mull. Yeah, right. Yeah. Knocknain's right opposite Tobermory, essentially. Discursive landscape. It takes time to get around, and that's a good thing. It gives you time to think. But I do think, personally speaking, I think some of the most exciting whiskies coming out of Scotland at the moment are from these new distilleries on the West Coast. Absolutely, Knocknain, pioneering organic, 100% organic whiskey. Ardnamurchan, not only green, but just making phenomenal whiskies. Torreveg, Slate, Rasay, Harris, which hasn't come out yet, but the juice is great. There's going to be a new distillery in Barra, a new one in Benbecula. So that the whole of the West Coast is really, really kicking at the moment, and it's great. And I'm not a great believer in regional styles, but I think the whole thing about place, which essentially is what the book is about, is more. The regionality thing is a bit of a simplifying of the whole thing, like terroir is a simplifying of the whole thing. Yeah. The whole thing about place is about people, because it's about community. It's about how people interact with the landscape and how that whiskey comes out of all of that. And some of that generates flavour, but actually it's more to do with what the distillery does to that community. And what the distilleries on the West Coast, the new distilleries on the West Coast have done is regenerate communities, in extraordinary ways. There's 30-odd people working on Rasay. Yeah. Pretty much all of them are under 30. Yeah. On an island which was losing people and an ageing population. Yeah. The same on Slate, the same in Harris, the same at Ardnamurchan, the same at Knocknain, bam, 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 all the way through. Dornoch as well, what Phil and Simon are doing up there. Employing and re-employing young folk who want to stay, But because there's no careers, they can't. They've got to move away. So, and that's place.
Yeah.
So for me, it's less about the flavour and it's more about the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I do think, you know, coming from the West Coast anyway, I do think there is a kind of West Coast mentality. There's something about West Coasts that make people, you know, attract kind of weird people, I think. You know,
Do you think it's
it's the space? You know, I think, you know, you're kind of looking out to nothingness.
It's the weather, right?
And the weather,
Definitely
you know, it's the weather. Yeah.
But do you think it's the mentality of the West Coasters that help influence the style of whiskey coming from these distilleries?
Perhaps. I mean, if you talk to Alex at Ardnamurchan, you know, he quite overtly states that what they wanted to make at Ardnamurchan was a West Coast whiskey. You know, so the inspiration there was Springbank or Ben Nevis or and Talisker. And speak to Alistair at Razzie, you know, he'll be talking about a similar thing, saying, well, you know, his points of reference were Bowmore's and also Talisker. You know, so I'm not trying to copy it, but saying, well, actually, these are flavours that I like, and these are flavours that somehow speak of the place. And, you know, Ardnamurchan, you know, they wanted to make a salty whiskey, but nobody knows how to do it.
Yeah.
But by God, they've done it somehow.
They've nailed
it. You know, so yeah, I mean, isn't that the joy of whiskey? You know, you never quite know what's good to. You can set a distillery along one path, and the distillery will decide what it wants to make. Really,
that's true. That's
to some extent. Yeah.
Just sitting here patiently biding my time.
It's been, I tell you, for me personally, being able to ask you more than one question and just watching Jason there, just breathing, it's like Lamaze breathing.
So when I was teaching at the University of Idaho, I had a colleague called Larry Forney, and he was about 20 years older than me and was distinguished the world over as a microbiologist. And I loved co-teaching with him. And I once made a comment to him saying, when we walk into that classroom, you can't help yourself but talk. He was like, no, I'm going to have a quiet day. And I said, it's impossible. You will not be able to have a quiet day. And he was so fucking stubborn. He walked in, he sat in the back row, he didn't say a single word, and at the end of class he got up and walked out.
I love this guy. He's a hero.
He is my inspiration for today.
There you go.
This is how Jason takes a back seat in an interview. As you're talking there, Dave, assuming I can ask a question.
I'll allow it.
We had a law framework in our last interview with Dave as well. When we spoke to you 2 years ago, again, about Dave Broom, that episode was titled A Sense of Place. Right. And you were talking then about getting back on the road in March with Christina.
Yeah.
And getting out and getting the right light and starting the project. And you talked then about using COVID to maybe pivot. And you thought at that time COVID would actually maybe play more of a role in the book. I raced through the book. I fucking loved the book. I emailed you and I said I love this, and I started buying copies for people.
Thank you.
I think when you put your money where your mouth is, it's not just lip service. I disclosed I got a free book from the publisher. We've quoted you a few times in some other episodes, extra, and One Nation Under Whisky. Did you end up having the COVID angle, or did you get to a point of writing where you were like, look, we need to put this to bed?
I remember that conversation. I thought, it will be a COVID book. And then I thought, as we began to go on the road, I said, actually, it's not, because the story's a bigger story. You know, it's not a COVID. So there's I think there's one mention of pandemic in there and lockdown. It would have seemed more like moaning somehow. And it just didn't fit. You know, this is a whole bunch of things that from that original plan, I kind of went back to the original plan, kind of looked at where the book ended up and came, well, actually, that went. But other things then came in because, I mean, the glorious thing about a road trip is that themes begin to emerge that you don't actually know about, and connections are suddenly become apparent. So, well, actually, I'm going to pick up on that one and run with that. Like, for example, we were in Speyside, and to try and look at Speyside, even though I'm not a regional kind of guy, but to try and look at that area in terms of place, it's really hard for so many distilleries, and how do you fight your way through it? And decided to go look at it through the Grant family of Glenfiddich, Balvenie, Kinnimpton, etc. Because the story of that family and of the Gordon family allows you to tell the story of that whole region and that whole area and craftsmanship and how it evolved, etc., etc. And met up with Grant Gordon, and Grant's a family member. He's not actively involved in the whisky side of the business, but he is chair of the Cabrach Trust. And the Cabrach is this Scotland Siberia, boom, amazing pub, but nothing, cleared, it's effectively cleared, blah blah blah. Yeah. And Grant and the Cabrach Trust, they're wanting to bring people back into that area, and they're building a distillery. And that then, all of a sudden, I knew that idea of the ripples that a distillery causes, when it opens up in a remote part, that was going to be the West Coast. And all of a sudden, there was a link. Yeah. This isn't just the West Coast thing. This is actually happening in the area where you wouldn't expect it to happen in a way. So suddenly, that then became perhaps a more central theme than I had previously envisaged. Yeah, so it was great. It's a fluid operation. The works of Patrick Geddes, who's a town planner, ecologist. He essentially invented ecology. Just a remarkable man. Beginning of the 20th century, Scot. His work and the way that he looked at work and place and folk suddenly became incredibly important. He wasn't there on the first drafts of this book. Wow. I kind of began. Well, actually, Geddes keeps popping up in all the other reference books I'm looking at. Okay. Actually, then he becomes like a central part to it. I had to drop a lot of the Gaelic poetry. Okay. My editor did tell me, Dave, it's a book about whiskey. It's not a book about 18th century Gaelic poetry. So kind of reined back on that one a wee bit. But there's enough in there.
On those two very points that you just raised, on Speyside and place, and then Gaelic and the understanding of language allowing us to understand place. When we spoke to you in 2020, the end of, you had said, writing about Speyside with place is so difficult, but I think I've got a plan. Yeah. You didn't share it. Did that end up being the plan? Yeah. Or okay.
Yeah. That
was the point at which you were cracking.
That was the wee germ just come in through one distillery, but actually it's not coming in through a distillery, it's coming in through the family. So it's coming in, it's telling the story of the people, and through telling the story of the people you can then allow it to spread out. So you're not just writing a distillery profile, it's bigger than that, but it's using that as an example of what was happening actually across the whole of the whole area. And it kind of avoided that thing of, it's not a book, we visit 9 distilleries, maybe. So it's not a book about every distillery in Scotland. No. But the other thing that I didn't expect it to be, and I think what it has ended up being, is taking the temperature of what the Scotch whisky industry at this point in its remarkable evolution in the 21st century. And I didn't go out with that intention. I went out to write a book about landscape and place and community and stuff, and it ended up being this. Actually, this is where whiskey is, and this is where Scotch whiskey is conceivably going. So I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah. Who knows?
I thought the book made perfect sense from our original conversation when you had said the big distilleries have kind of moved away from place. They've gone global, and they want to be seen as global. You made a comment about moving into the luxury market as well, and they wanted to be seen as luxury. In going through the book, I loved reading about new distillery, new project within a community. I loved all of that side of it. When you say just now taking the temperature, is that part of what you're reading on that temperature gauge? Is instead of these new distilleries competing with the big boys, they're instead creating a new niche of their own within this product we call Scotch whisky.
Yeah, very much so. And I think we've been very guilty of, this kind of binary thinking of, small is big is bad, small is good, et cetera, et cetera. The fact is that, the Scotch whisky industry, because it was the dominant player by far, by such a degree, all the way through the 20th century, it was set up around blends. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Therefore, the maltings had to be bigger. The industry had to run efficiently. Distilleries were going to get bigger, et cetera, and they were still producing highly individual spirits. But the paradigm was different. The model was different. But that's changed.
Yeah.
So there is now this parallel track that new distillers can go down if they want to, which is, we talked about Razzie, for example.
Yeah.
You speak to Alistair at Razzie, and he says, this, and he's a very humble man, but he said, this distillery could be the first in Scotland to be designed by a blender.
Wow.
So he's one, but he's got lots of bells and whistles in that distillery. With cooling jackets and line arms and purifiers and temperature control and fermentation and everything to produce as many different styles as possible for a single malt.
Yeah.
So there are these two parallel tracks because Diageo has to make enough juice for 20 million cases of Johnny Walker a year.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that model is valid. It's just not the only way. That whiskey can be made, and I think that's what is exciting about it at the moment. That the creative possibilities of whiskey are now being explored by all companies, no matter what size they are. I think one of the most telling, one of the most enjoyable chapters or interviews that I did, and they were all enjoyable. They were all lovely people,
except that one.
But chatting with Jim Beveridge and Emma Walker about blends and place and scale, and can blends have it? Because I was tasting it, that thing, does that matter and doesn't? And their answers, which I'm not going to tell you because you have to buy the book, is I think really, really amazing. That conversation was kind of boom. There's a lot going on in whiskey that we don't really hear about.
Yeah, I love that segment of the book. So
it's
I will not.
It was kind of Jim's last interview as well. So
there you go.
He was very relaxed.
There you go.
So I know, right? What's happening?
Semadonna.
So you mentioned before there are certain distilleries that you didn't focus on because it's less about Scotland and more about a global product, right? I feel we just said that. I just want to make sure that I'm listening right, because Jason always says you're only listening 25% of the time.
He's a terrible listener, Dave. A terrible listener. One
of the things that I've been observing, and maybe I'm not looking at it correctly, but one of the things that I've been observing is you've got more and more Scottish distilleries opening up with this sense of independence. And like even Isle of Arran, right? 1995, what does that make them now? 27 years old? And still independent. And confidently so. And more Scottish distilleries are opening up with that idea of independence. And here we are just this past week in the U.S. We had Wilderness Trail sell to Campari and Balcones sell to Diageo. And, and I want to make sure I'm saying this the right way. I think these distilleries are still going to make great products, and Balcones will continue to make a great Texas single malt. But do you think that there's the potential for that sense of place to go away, and now it becomes this global brand?
Not if they guard it. Not if it's part of the ethos. I mean, I can't see Jared suddenly throwing everything that Balcones has stood for. You don't see that with Westland.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So no, I don't think. I think if the parent company, whoever handles it in a very very gentle way and say, actually, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We're here to support, so we can give you maybe greater technical support or distribution channels or whatever. But you run your own business, and they're hands off about it. Then I think that's absolutely fine. But even that whole thing about independence, I get asked similar questions, not that question, but similar questions quite regularly, and I always end up saying, yeah, but William Grant and Sons are independent. That's a family-owned company.
Right.
That's a family-owned company.
That's a very good point.
It's a family-owned company. So yeah, it's. I mean, and also I suspect some of the distilleries in Scotland might be bought by slightly larger companies. I think perhaps that's an inevitability because they'll need cash flow, and so some of them might go as a result. So I think that's just part of the natural process, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's necessarily automatically to the detriment of the quality of the spirit or the.
No, I agree with you, and there's a reason why these larger corporations will want to buy that distillery because they were doing X, and if you buy them because they were doing X and make them to be a distillery to do Y, then why did you even?
But it's an interesting knee-jerk reaction because I think so many of us have it where we say, oh, I love the independent. It's been bought by a multinational. Ah, shit. The multinational is the multinational for a reason, right? There's a reason they've got all the money in the world because they're very successful at making and selling product. And so I'm kind of exploring this for my own self here where I'm like, why do I have that knee-jerk reaction? Why do I think the big player coming in is automatically a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's like your favourite punk rock band. Suddenly
went
signing.
Exactly
Well, it's like when Sonic signed to Geffen. Showing my age. It's they've sold out, bastards. The Clash have signed to CBS.
100. You brought the exact example I was thinking of. There's so many bands that, oh man, their first 2 albums, incredible. Then they got signed by so-and-so, and damn, did they go down the drain. There you go. Oh, there you go.
I've just taken a sip of American light whiskey, which is bought for Whiskey Jubilee.
Chicago 2015.
Which is insane. Insane in a wonderful way.
For the listeners, Jason, in case you haven't mentioned it 500 times already, could you go over the makeup of this whiskey that we've just poured?
I'm always terrible with the ages on it. You're much better with the ages on it.
It's an 8-year-old.
Okay. So I couldn't have told you that. I always thought it was an 11-year-old, and we've got other projects. But we took, for Whiskey Jubilee Chicago 2015, it was our first event there after we'd been in New York for a number of years. So we needed something that would impress, open eyeballs. And so we had 8-year-old American light whiskey that went into an ex-rye barrel that had been used in our time doing a project with High West. Mm-hmm. We sent it off to Schmaltz Brewing, who just sunsetted in the last year or so.
Yeah, that's right.
Have now gone from the beer landscape. They put a heavily malted beer into that ex-rye cask.
It was their Hopmana IPA. Heavily malted, though. Yeah.
And they put it in with fresh mustard seeds. So the beer sat, a heavily malted beer sat
in a rye cask.
In an ex-rye cask with fresh mustard seeds. And we took our light whiskey and stuck it in that. And it was in there for literally 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Really?
This moved lightning fast.
Yeah, real fast.
We then had a sister cask that stayed in for 2 years. They were radically different casks. As we talk about sister casks and, they're all the same. They're sister. No, they're very different. One of them just burned down the police station and the other one went to Harvard Law. Right.
Why not both, Jason?
And then we bottled this at 64.5%?
65.1%.
Oh, 65.1? 65.1?
65.1.
You have the bottle, so I do trust you
I didn't even
this.
need to look at it. The numbers guy.
So the point for me is always when people say, what do you drink of an evening? I don't have a lot of go-tos. I like to see what's the latest thing. And to be honest with you, when I was reading your book and we started on Orkney, I went and poured some Stones of Stenness that we had bottled, and I was drinking that while reading the book. So I'm more prone to do that. But this is a go-to for me because it's not like anything else on my shelf.
No, it's mad in a wonderful way. It's kind of a Mandarin thing.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Spiced
Yeah.
gumdrops.
You know, where's that coming from? It's just
So
like,
that's the light whiskey, right? That is a key component. A good light whiskey should have that spiced orange gumdrop note, right? So it's for you or for the listeners, light whiskey is, at least this one, because the mash bill changed a little bit, is like a standard MGP mash bill, right? Corn, rye, bitter malt. Then distilled to, it has to be over 80%, anywhere between 80 to like 94.5, I think.
Exactly.
And then instead of put into new charred oak, they're put into ex-bourbon barrels.
Right.
Hence, and now that's the category of light whiskey. So it was a category we discovered working with Dave Perkins of High West.
Yeah.
And he fell in love with it. He got a whole slate of casks and said, okay, yeah, we love it too now. And you can see it's just wild flavors.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Reason,
thank you for that.
The reason I wanted to pour it for you is I've talked to you about it every time I've seen you.
Yep.
And I've always been meaning to send you a sample, and I don't know if I have or
No,
have
you
not.
No, but it's okay.
That's okay. You know, you forget about Dave Broom the second you hang up on the call. You know, it's kind of offensive. I do apologise. But
who was that guy again?
in our last chat, we got around to, and I'm not. This sounds like I'm leading the witness, which we talked about in the last episode. You doing it, Joshua. We talked about whiskies that have really opened your eyes. And in that moment, we talked about when was the last exceptional whiskey you had. And I'm not pitching this as today's exceptional whiskey. I'm pitching this as, and I saw it happen to you, this opens your eyes. Right?
God, yeah.
You just go, wait,
hey, what's going on?
Right? Yeah, and I'd even said to you, like, we could talk about this. We don't have to talk about this. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. And you're silently pointing at the bottle like, what's happening, boys? What's happening?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I mean,
Cheers.
That's what it's about, isn't it? You know, to be, hugely excited.
It's my pleasure to share this with you.
Thank you. It's
so excited to have.
It's really, really good. Yeah.
Cheers. And for the listener, it sold out 7 years ago, so it really is just talking about something that's really fun and that I really love.
There you go. I had my question before. You were allowed.
So talking about the whiskey actually threw me off where I was taking all of this. I don't have a question in the chamber right now. I do want to put you on the spot, David. Something's going
full name. He just full name checking. David, not Dave.
I'm
David.
worried now.
Yeah, I would be.
So something is going to happen in another hour and a bit today that will be in the distant rear view mirror by the time this episode drops. But because we've talked about tasting and leading tastings, Joshua and I are going to have the privilege of sitting in on your SMWS tasting this afternoon that is connected to your book, A Sense of Place.
Yes.
Can you talk now about what you're going to do shortly?
No.
Okay.
No, of course I can.
You were so serious. I called you David and then you shook your head so seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, the questions have been so great. Some of the themes will pop up. So yeah, it's the tasting or the talk or whatever is essentially taking the people through the thinking behind the book and what those various themes were. So looking at conditions. Why Scotland makes whiskey. And kind of going back, why did we start in Orkney? Why did we start in the Neolithic and not with Friar John Core? Why did we go back to 6,000 years when they weren't making whiskey? Because it's important. Looking at community, looking at craftsmanship, looking at how connections were frayed. So the connections between farmer and distiller, for example, began to be frayed. What happened to Scotch's image, and did this idea of place disappear in terms of people's idea of Scotch? It didn't disappear necessarily on the part of people who were making it, but did that kind of cease to be a vital element within it? And then looking at the renaissance of whiskey and sustainability. So that's essential. Those are kind of the big building blocks throughout that, and then there's whiskies to help move the conversation on and allow people to kind of zone out and have a drink. And also there's images, so we've got a screen. We've got a screen with with Christina's images on them, because they are such, and I have to say this because I haven't really talked about Christina at all. They're such an important part of the book, because you can see the eyes of the people we talk to, and you can see the places, and they're beautiful photos, but they tell an incredible story and they move it forward. So where possible, I always like to have those images coming up, because that also helps with kind of moving it. And people will ask questions, and things will go, in whatever direction that they go. That's it's a conversation rather than a rant. No preachy stuff. No preachy stuff.
How much of the pictures themselves helped drive the narrative of the story, or were they applied afterwards?
No, because we travelled together.
Yeah.
With one exception. I've known Christina for a few years anyway. So we sat down before it started, before the trip started, and kind of roughed out what we wanted to do. No noses in glasses. No light, natural light. Etc. Etc. And then when we went to, so we started in Orkney. So we went to Orkney, and kind of after the first day, we then sat down, over a glass or two and something to eat, and looked at the photos and kind of went, right, okay, that works, that doesn't work, etc., etc. So it was a wholly collaborative effort. So she sat in on all the interviews.
Okay.
So from that then gave her an idea of what she could then photograph. And because I was then seeing all the photos, I could go, actually, that bit is really important, and can we pick up on this? Can we pick up on that? So, the two of us, I wasn't telling her how to take a photo, but, for the bit that she followed on, which was the McNay and Ardnamurch and Razzie bit, I kind of did a shoot list.
Yeah.
This is where I went.
Interesting.
These are the people. These are the people I met. Do what you want, but here are this is what the chapter's going to look like. So can you take images that are going to support that? So yeah. I mean, it genuinely is a collaborative effort.
That's beautiful.
It's not just pretty pictures too.
and that's sort of what I was asking is. You'd said, this picture makes sense for that. Let's go in that direction. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I had a separate question, but Jason, if you wanted to go on more about the images, please.
Just real fast. How did you meet Christina, and had you collaborated elsewhere, or was this the first?
Yeah, she did the stills photography for Amber Light, the film, the multi-award winning film. It's now on Netflix.
Not here in the U.S.
Not in the U.S. Not yet.
No, I've looked for it.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah. So she did that, and it transpires that we have so many friends in common, and bizarrely we just kind of never hooked up. So yeah, it was through Amber Light, but we continue to think about other projects now. We're a team.
I've got a little side question.
On
photography.
Okay, I'll phone her up if you want.
So not actually about Christina, but about your Japanese book, The Way of Whiskey, which should have been with me before this interview, but will be with me after this interview because of the way shipping currently works. The relationship that you had with your photographer in Japan, did you learn anything from that experience that you applied to your time with Christina?
Yeah, very much so. I'd never met Taki until I went to Japan, but I had seen his work, so I knew how he approached things. So essentially we did the same thing. We sat down, and had a chat about how I was thinking the book, what the book was about, and how and he got it like that.
Nice.
He got it immediately. Yeah, and so I learned a huge amount from working with him. Who's equally a remarkable photographer. Awesome. About how this could work. So this is essentially a companion volume, So it's the Way of Whiskey was looking at the big picture of Japanese whiskey. Why Japanese whiskey is Japanese, and this is taking a different angle, but it's road trip. It's whiskey within a wider context. And we'll see what happens next. You know?
Well, I went back and bought the Japanese one because of how much I enjoyed this one.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm a completionist, so if you say companion volume, I'm going to have the companion.
Was there, at any point in writing this book and traveling and taking pictures, was there any point in time where it changed your understanding of Scotland as a Scotsman on this trip?
I'll just wait for that truck to go past while I think about that answer. Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah,
I think it did. I think it did when I think the whole. I mean, I knew about, I've been going to the West Coast for long enough, and I knew about depopulation, knew about clearances, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think the impact that the distillery had on community.
Yeah,
I didn't really appreciate how important that was, and I think that really came through, and I think on that last chapter, where it was, which is essentially about Bruichladdich, you're getting deep into the thinking behind what they are doing.
Yeah,
that was great. I mean, I knew what they were doing, but actually sitting down over a long period of time with Adam and Alan and getting their thinking, and then seeing how that fitted into that bigger picture, that kind of that changed it as well. I think it left me with it really optimistic. I was very optimistic by the end of it, which is very not un-Scottish,
It makes me laugh about our last interview.
Actually, it was that kind of weird thing, because it was COVID. It was, what the hell's happening, kind of thing. It's just a few wee people kind of doing weird things, and interesting things, but kind of weird things, out in the margins, as it were, and it's not, and it's part of and I suppose talking to all the craftspeople as well, whether they're boat builders or cabinet makers or perfumers or whatever, to see whiskey from that context of it being part of a Scottish renaissance in creativity, that was really exciting. So yes, so it did.
Very cool.
It did.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is how good of an interview partner I have intended to be today.
All right.
When we completed our interview 2 years ago, you talked afterwards about having an independent bottling question in the chamber for the next time we spoke to Dave.
Yeah.
The next time we spoke to Dave was a Michael Jackson interview.
Okay. Yeah.
A Michael Jackson remembrance.
Yep, I remember.
A ton of fun. Yeah. But we're sitting here with Dave Broom today, and we've never discussed independent bottling with Dave.
And you're expecting me to remember
100%.
my question from 2 years ago.
While saying, gosh, Jason, you are a wonderful interview partner.
You're a son of a bitch is what you are.
You're welcome. When you come for Jason, you better not miss.
Man,
really, you have no idea what that was.
It's so funny.
Wow, you were like, oh, I've got it, I'm ready to go.
Listeners, if you could see the looks that are being exchanged over the table at this particular point, it's like, it's like a scene out of a Western. Somebody's going to go for their gun very quickly, Yeah,
I feel...
The bartender has just ducked down behind the counter.
We're in a saloon.
Yeah, because all hell is about to break loose.
Oh my gosh, there's a spaghetti Western song coming on. Yeah, now I feel the pressure to ask a very specific independent bottling question, and I don't.
All right, I figured you'd...
Yeah, no.
Because here's the thing, we're at the end of the interview. I don't really want to get into an independent bottling conversation at the end, but I definitely wanted your pressing question to be asked.
You're a much better man than I am, Jason.
Maybe it's been answered.
Maybe it's been answered.
Over the period, over 2 years.
So we always get out of here, and we did the last time we spoke to you. We always get out of here. What are you excited about going forward? But I'm going to lead the witness again today.
All right.
You are the only human being on the face of the planet to have been on One Nation Under Whisky 4 times.
That's very true. That is very true.
The question for you today is, do you still have professional goals now that you've achieved 4 times on One Nation Under Whisky?
But yeah, I think I can retire. You know, I think this is it. You know, I'm not going to get greedy. You know, this is it. This is the pinnacle of my achievement. I think it doesn't get better than this. Sweating under a DC sun. It's been a treat. But seriously, do I have professional goals? There's still some stuff. Yeah, I think I'm on. I think this has opened up a lot of new avenues for me to explore, and there might be a third in the series.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I genuinely don't know what it is. I genuinely don't know what it is. And it won't be Scotland. But you know, I just think it's an interesting approach. Which is just wildly self-indulgent. but I thoroughly enjoyed doing this. I mean, there's a new atlas coming out, not next year, year after. So that's the next one. But you know, we'll see what happens next.
How's the revisit to that? Do you?
Hell.
I wondered about that aspect of it, because I feel like going into a new project, the sky's the limit. It's all open and available to you, but you're staring that blank page square in the face. Going back to the edit, you've got the framework, you've got the words. How do you go about editing?
It's a complete rewrite.
Oh,
you know,
wow,
as
really?
simple as that. Yeah, it's a complete because there's
why
140 distilleries in Scotland, 30 in Ireland, 30 in England, 1,500 in the States, 40 in Japan. You know, I could go 24 in China. The format had to change.
Right.
So it has to retain. So the issue is that it has to retain some of what makes the atlas, but it needs to be completely redone and approached in a new way. So it's going to be an entirely new book, but recognisable as the book it was. So I've got a meeting in 2 weeks' time, and over the day we're going to thrash out how we're going to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any?
In other words, I don't know.
When did you write/publish the atlas?
And the first one was 2010, 2012, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any parts that you, in going back through it, look at and go, oof, that belonged in that time? Has anything happened in this decade where you're like, wow, I don't talk about it like that anymore. I don't even think I think about it like that anymore. Have you had any moments like that? Because obviously there's this simple geographic reality of more distilleries.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, I haven't gone back and read it, to be honest. It's done. It's an old book. It's a good book. And I'm still proud of it. But I mean, so much has happened. This last decade has been. I mean, the pace at which whiskey has changed all around the world has been utterly astounding.
Yeah.
So that changed, and I don't think that could have been predicted. I mean, nobody would have predicted there'd be 24 distilleries in China.
Exactly. That was in my head right now.
Japan. Even when I was writing Way of Whiskey, there weren't that many new distilleries in Japan. Now all of a sudden, boom, and they're coming from different angles. Some are converted, some are switching from shochu to whiskey. Some are new distilleries, etc. But the pace of change has been remarkable. And I think the pace of thinking has been remarkable as well. But trying to keep up, Scottish rye or Australian bourbon or bourbon style whiskey coming from Australia. I mean it's amazing. It's amazing what's happening. But it becomes an interesting challenge for the writer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when we talked to you last, it was a case of you've been writing about this industry for 3 decades, 4 decades.
33 in the third year.
There you go. I didn't quite know. Round up, round down.
Yeah. It's good. It's the same speed as good vinyl.
But how remarkable that there's always something new to be writing about, right?
Yeah.
Like even in the 2 years since we last spoke to you, there's new projects, there's new ways of thinking, there's new conversations to be had. That seems remarkable.
Yeah, but you know, life is about change. You know, things never stay the same. You know, it's constant movement. You know, the pace of movement has been faster than we anticipated. But good God, it would be incredibly boring if it was still the same old shit.
Right.
It, you know.
Right. No, we quote Heraclitus around here a lot. That change is the only constant.
Yeah. There we are. You know. Yeah.
I had one final question.
Objection.
Your Honor, your husband, your father, you're a whiskey writer. When you're not doing those things, what excites Dave Broom? What do you do? Is it music? Is it hiking? Like what are some of the other things that you're like?
Yeah,
I just need a break.
Are you
right?
actually a human being?
Yeah. Like when you spend your time as a human being, Dave.
Actually, those things, you know, I remain a music obsessive. So that's that's a really important part of my life. You know, I love that. And yes, and I do go out walking and hiking. You know, we live in the south coast of England, but there's a national park just behind us, which is essentially just a big ridge, and you can just walk for miles and miles, and you know, not see many people, and and that's glorious. So I do that. Yeah, you know, those are kind of the two big things. I do other stuff, but you know, I eat food. I cook.
Right. Wait a second. You eat food, Dave?
Food.
Well, he said he cooks meth.
Cook?
Oh, meth. That's a different thing.
You know. So I do have a life out with whiskey.
Okay.
I love the fact that you're basically trying to convince us that you're a functioning human being. I feel like we just ended up in the Skirning test? Like, not Skirning.
But yeah, I mean, part of the reason I ask is you were talking about incorporating music and musicians into some of your tour, and I think back, like, you know, this 2.5 years where we were living through COVID, and the thing that killed me the most was not being able to go out and see live music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now that live music is back, it's this. For me, it's this place in my soul it's this hole in my soul that's been filled once again.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you're experiencing the same.
Yeah. I mean, it's just great to be able to go out to gigs again and support these guys, because you know it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's really tough for musicians these days. You know, because of streaming and Spotify and all of that. You know, trying to make a living out of it. So support. Yeah.
All right, support your local helicopters.
There we are.
Yeah,
that was the Skywriter that I ordered for you. Well, dear listeners, purchase A Sense of Place.
Yes.
Words by Dave Broom, photographs by Christina Kernahan. Dave, thank you.
It's been an absolute treat. Great to see you again, guys.
Yeah,
great to
likewise.
see you. Yeah.
Wonderful to see you in person.
Can't wait for your 5th time on One Nation Under Whisky.
2027. Cheers.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Sincere thanks to Bill Thomas and the team at Jack Rose for opening their doors to us and allowing us to spend additional time with Dave before his tasting. Of course, sincere thanks to Dave for his time before that tasting he was about to do. And as we said before we started the interview, in our lead-in, his tasting was excellent. And the stories he went on to tell about A Sense of Place were captivating. And I don't believe I can plug this book too much. Please go and buy a copy. It's a book about Scotland. It's written by Dave, of course. It's photographed by Christina, of course. It's a book about Scotland, and Scotland is absolutely majestic in this book. And as a very proud Scotsman, I want all of you listening around the world to see the majesty of Scotland. So I really mean it when I say I can't pimp it enough. I can't recommend it enough. Go get a copy.
Wow, those are some seriously strong words.
And I stand by everyone. You know me, Joshua. I'm not I'm not a man of strong words unless it's 59 degrees Fahrenheit on the centigrade scale. But in this instance, I stand by every one of those strong words. Nobody spending their money on this book will be disappointed by the money they have spent on this book. And you're talking to a canny Scot who has spent his own money on copies of this book.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
As well as having, promotion copies. I have also reached into my own pocket. So I stand by all my words.
Do you know that song? Oh, jeez. I think it might be Lionel Richie. Maybe it was Lionel Richie was when he was in the Commodores, right?
This is a long-ass title. Okay.
When it was
This is like Fiona Apple's album.
Twice, 3 times, my lady. That song I can't sing today. I really apologize to Tim Gullicksrud.
Tim Gullicksrud has tuned out. He has turned off his radio.
Let's try this. Once, twice, 3.
Yeah, you didn't need the Jason version in there.
There have been a few people who've been on the podcast, not once, not twice, but 3 times, my lady. And this time around, it's once, twice, 3, nay, 4 times, my Davie. Dave Broom has been... What?
Oh my gosh. If I had a time machine, I would go back to the very beginning of this podcast and beg you not to mix alcohol with over-the-counter pharmaceutical remedies. Mistakes have been made this day.
Like Ozzy Osbourne, I am flying high again. This is amazing. Flying high again. Dun-na, 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 dun-na.
The train theme continues.
Yeah, so we've had Mark Watt 3 times on here, I think. And there have been maybe one other person we've had 3 times.
You've got me thinking.
Would it have been James Wills?
I know Kilchoman as a distillery has been a focus at least 3 times.
At least 3 times, yeah. That's a good point.
Maybe Anthony twice and James once?
And
maybe James twice, Anthony once?
And David Stirk has been on 3 times. Twice solo and then once with Mark Watt to discuss Electric Coup.
Okay.
But no one has been on our podcast.
Nobody.
4 times.
Nobody.
With the exception of Mr. Dave Broom.
Yeah. I was surprised by his answer that he still has professional goals after achieving this.
I think you've reached the pinnacle, right? This is the zenith.
Yeah. Master of the Quaich, globally renowned whiskey author, knowledgeable, brought in by various brands and conglomerates to educate staff. 4 times on One Nation Under Whisky.
Done. Close your doors. Hand your keys back in.
That's it.
Go on vacation.
Yeah. Take the rest of the day off.
Yeah.
You've achieved it.
It really was nice having him on. Having Dave Broom on for the 4 times has been great. But there was that episode back in early 2021 when we had him, we had Hansa Fringa, and we had Michael Jackson's partner Carolyn Smigalski on to discuss Michael Jackson and their memories of him and some of the stories about him. It's each interview with Dave really has been great because I enjoy his approach to writing. I like hearing his thoughts about whiskey, and especially with this latest one, it's more about Scotland and the connection to the land, and whiskey happens to be that connective tissue. But then when you talk with him and the others, and they're discussing a dear friend, right?
Yes.
There was a certain warmth that came through in that interview, and I've gone back to it a few times just to hear them talk about Michael, and I know that you've done the same.
100%. Yeah, and even as we're kind of counting through Dave's appearances, like even the episode that I kept referencing from December of 2020, it was called A Sense of Place. We were discussing the book in progress at that point. But before we move out of this little segment, I do want to give one more thank you to Liz Herman at Octopus Publishing.
Yes,
she
indeed.
was the reason that we got the book in preview. She was the reason we got the interview scheduled as part of Dave's visit over here.
Yep.
She was the reason we got the tickets to the tasting where we got to enjoy Dave's presentation. And the fact that she even made it down to DC for a portion of the day was really wonderful, and an opportunity to say thank you to her in person. But I also want to give her that thank you in front of our listeners, who are clearly very important to us as well.
And I think that I like that you mentioned that, right? Because there's a bit of transparency there. That we were there as guests, but I think it's really important. What you had pointed out before is, despite us getting a preview copy, you have purchased copies of this book. I've purchased a copy of this book. I'm going to purchase another one as a gift. And so, yes, we were guests, but we're supporting this man with our dollars because we stand behind him. We stand behind the book. So,
100%, Joshua.
Open and honest
100%.
There.
Yep. So there we go. Here endeth the lesson.
So normally around this time, we would bring out the paperboy, or we would maybe include a tasting or something like that. But you said you have a surprise for me. I had to close my eyes.
Well, before we get to that grand reveal, you always ask me that question, is it worth waking the paperboy? And for what I'm going to say, it's not, because I just want to slide this in for those of you in America who have been supporting our 4th woodcut bottling. And we've been sending occasional updates to those wonderful, wonderful Single Cask Nation supporters. That release has now been bottled in Scotland. It has been labelled. It has been put in cases. It has been palletised. And hopefully, by the time this episode drops, it will be on its way towards a plane to bring it to the United States of America.
Amazing.
We will be shipping out all those bottles to all those early supporters first. They will be getting a big thank you from us and immediate shipment from us.
Indeed.
We do have 50 bottles available for sale that will be going on our website after the early adopters have received, opened, tasted, enjoyed their bottles. But just something for those in the US to look out for, both those receiving bottles that they paid for and those who maybe want to jump on it now that it will be available for a quicker turnaround.
It was so nice seeing a picture of that bottle completed with the label on it, that the label was gorgeous.
Which has been shared with the early adopters.
Good. Yeah. And even that, what I love about this, so what I love about this is the fact that we have early adopters, the fact that people believed in this, bought into the pre-sale, understanding that it could take a little bit to get the bottle. So
absolutely,
we thank them endlessly, profusely. But you've been drip feeding them little thing like, here's the cask, here's what the color is, and it's been a bit of a tease, and even that picture was a bit of a tease because you didn't get to see all of the label. You got to see a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly. Well, and I think for the early adopters, they're also getting a close-up look at the state of global logistics right now, and I include in that label production, label shipment, bottling times, labeling times, the opportunity to actually get it palletized and get it towards a plane for air freighting to the US. Everything is taking a long time. And even when we've said this is going to take time, it's taken a little longer and they're getting to experience that. So hopefully they're enjoying the added value of, holy shit, this is a difficult time to be in the whiskey industry and get things bottled and shipped to America. Yes, it is. You're welcome. More than happy to show you that side of proceedings. But now here we are. So wonderful, wonderful news that we're getting ever closer. Of course, now we move into Thanksgiving and the holiday season, and we will be shipping it just as quick as we are possibly able.
Speaking of Thanksgiving, before we go into your big surprise and your grand reveal, I just want to remind the listeners that Haida and I are going to be traveling down to Virginia to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with the Johnston Yellens.
Very much so.
And this is part 2 of the podcast spousal takeover, or the spousal podcast takeover, or the takeover of the podcast by the spouses. And so if you have any questions that you want our wives to ask us, or this may be even more interesting, if you have any questions that you want us to ask our wives, please do email them in, questions at One Nation Under Whisky, whiskey, of course, spelled without an E, or info@singlecasknation.com. You have until really the Wednesday before Thanksgiving to get the question in, but we urge you to send them in quickly because it'd be nice to have them sooner, so you don't forget, so we don't forget. So send them on in, and we'd be happy to include them if we could.
That's excellent. I'm looking forward to the 4 of us getting a little bit of booze and having a wee chitty-chatty.
Yeah. So are you going to be leaving out the little fishbowl again for our keys like you did last time?
If I have to pull your keys out again, I will not be playing that game. Perfect transition. I will also say this, as you're talking about Thanksgiving and we're talking about the festive season, we have worked diligently to put excess bottles on our website so that people can go on anytime, day, night, day of the week, place orders, get $15 flat rate shipping to their front doors. Please support us. Please go online. Please pick up your bottles. You will see American single malt. You will see
bourbon.
You will see Indian peated single malt, Swedish single malt in new charred oak. There's some good offerings up there. We've also got our $75 53.5% 3 barrels of bourbon combined with 1 barrel of rye, which is unbelievably delicious, and we will be drinking a lot of that when you're here for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so with all of that said, we're going to do a little game here. We're going to taste our 4th and final offering from our friends at Blind Barrels, but your cold and cough has kind of kicked that one out of touch.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I have pivoted to a little guessing game that does not, even though he's been mentioned in this episode previously, does not involve Michael Jackson.
All right.
Amazingly, you mentioned this book earlier in today's episode without knowing that this is what I secretly pulled off of my shelf for me to play this little game with.
Caligula?
Could you insert a needle scratching across a record sound effect at this juncture? Oh my lord, that was unexpected. I've not practiced these paragraphs, and they give the game away multiple times.
All right.
So I will try to do my best here. But the book is 101 Whiskies to Try Before You Die by Mr. Ian Buxton.
That is so funny. That's hilarious.
I cannot believe you uttered this name, this author and book.
Is that the new edition?
Remarkable.
Is that his revised edition?
This is not. No, okay. This is from way back in the day. And again, this was a preview edition of this book. Yeah, I'm showing copyright 2010, first published in 2010. But because you're a little bit under the weather, I wanted to play the guessing game with you, since you can still use your head brains, even if you can't use your mouth, tongue, and your face nose. So here we do.
Can I use my anus rectum? Rectum anus?
You can't help yourself. So let's see if I can get through this without giving the game away.
All right.
I'm not even going to tell you the position in 101 Whiskies. I'm going to have you guess the position as you work out what the whiskey is, and I'm going to continue referring to it as a whiskey.
Okay, so just to be clear, I have to guess the specific whiskey.
Yes.
And not just the distillery, but the specific whiskey from that distillery. Okay.
Yep. You need to tell me this whiskey at this position in the 101.
Wait a second. Are you mentioning the numerical position, or I also have to guess which? I'm guessing.
You're guessing the numerical position after you guess the whiskey.
Okay. Final question for you. Because it's been a while since I've thumbed through the book. Does Ian list out the bottles as number one is the most important one of the 101 we should try?
I wish he did.
Yeah.
I really wish he had, because I would love to see who scraped in at 101st position.
Yeah, those poor people.
It is alphabetized.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Really, you're just guessing the number for my.
Hey, I got 26 chances.
Hold on.
Well, there's 26 letters in the alphabet, and so I have to figure out how that works into the 101 Dalmatians of whiskeys that we got going on here.
Congratulations on quickly overthinking this. Here we go. Let's cut to Mr. Ian Buxton here. Mm-hmm. What's this doing here? You may well ask, since it seems to be that the owners clearly don't care. Blank appears to be the unloved, and it would seem unwanted runt of the litter in the blank stable.
Wow.
Those two blanks are not the same word.
Okay, that answers the... All right, so it's blank and then blank. Okay, all right. So I'm thinking maybe parent company and then arranged at that parent... Okay, go on.
But they haven't killed it off with neglect and disinterest, nor have they managed to sell it to someone who would lavish on it the tender, loving care that it so evidently deserves. Parenthetical comment. Though, as we go to print, there are unconfirmed rumours that it's being offered for sale, so it may be in new hands by the time you read this. Close parenthetical comment.
Okay.
I'm going to blank something here that may or may not work out. I don't think it will work out, but I'm going to blank it anyway. The blank has been around for years. Parenthetical comment. Mm-hmm. I have seen a very lovely pre-war decanter in a Highland shooting lodge. Really, this whiskey's natural habitat. Close parenthetical comment. The whiskey is subtle and complex, though relatively light-bodied. Whiskey that has quietly attracted admirers among informed drinkers.
Huh.
It's entirely irrelevant, but it also has a great label. Just thought I'd mention it, as it marks you out as a drinker of taste and discernment, capable of looking beyond ritzy packaging to timeless elegance. More importantly, it is fantastic value. Final paragraph.
Okay.
That might explain the owner's reluctance to push sales. With this Hold on, I'm just parsing out what I can and cannot say here. Okay, I'm editing along the way here. The price is simply too low if it becomes a success, especially given the cost of building a brand. So get in fast, fill your boots.
Ooh.
This can't last, and you need to get some while you still can.
Wow.
Oh, that's good. That is, you're going to be... Nah, I'm not going to say that.
So let me ask you a question.
That's really good. Yes, sir.
Did his prophecy that he doth foretell, told, come true?
I don't know.
You don't know. All right. Okay. Oh, that, well...
Yeah. I'm not going to say that either. Let me give you tasting notes while you're thinking here. I'll buy you some time while I read these tasting notes.
Mm-hmm.
Color. Mm-hmm. Pale and interesting.
Okay.
Isn't that an interesting combination?
Yeah, pale and interesting. Okay.
Nose.
Yeah.
Fresh and floral with the blank influence evident. Pears and grassy notes. Very elegant. Taste. A very well balanced, well mannered whiskey. Just a hint of smoke covering delicate perfumed notes. Fresh fruit and hazelnuts. The finish. Subtle and delicate. A rapier of a whiskey, but with a killer edge of spice, chocolate, and toffee.
Rapier. So I've got a guess. So there are a few things going on here that I found to be hints. Mm-hmm. Hint number one were the first two blanks, where it was this blank and part of this range. So to me, it's like a parent company who owns a range of single malts. Okay.
Okay. Let me reiterate it for our listeners.
Yeah, please.
Blank appears to be the unloved and it would seem unwanted runt of the litter in the blank stable.
Yeah. And then it mentioned Highlands. So that has me whittle it down, right, that to a specific region. And then after that, the delicate smoke. And so I have an initial guess that I feel very confident.
Oh, I love it. You know, me and the listeners love your confidence. But always.
Part of the reason why I have a bit of confidence about it is quite often companies that own a range of distilleries don't rely on that distillery as a single malt product. Rather, they rely on it to fill a blend that they own, right? That's really what rings the cash register, as you will. And so if it is who I think it is, it's for a blend that I think could also use a bit more love, especially here in the States. Maybe it's more popular in UK, Europe, and elsewhere, just, ROW, the rest of the world, not the US. And this distillery, when they put out their single malt, it tends to be lighter. They're tending to use refill bourbon. So I would say,
God, with confidence, let's reiterate.
Yes, with confidence.
With great confidence.
It seems to me that it is Beam Suntory's ownership of Ardmore, that is a peated Highland, that was always a great value, and you could buy their single malt, like it was the Ardmore Traditional, I think it was. Back in 2010, you could buy that for $25 a bottle.
I like your reasoning.
It was pale. It had subtle peat. The ABV could have gone a bit higher, but it was a really nice dram, completely overlooked. So I may not be right, though I think I may be. I may not be right, actually, with your face. But I think, if anything, you should agree that my rationale is quite sound.
I like your logic. I think it makes good sense that you're saying what you're saying. I will say in response to you that the whiskey in this position in 101 Whiskies to Try Before You Die is not a single malt.
You know what? Okay, so I should have asked that, I guess. Oh, interesting. I guess there you go. There was an assumption. Okay.
You know, the blank and the blank, you were right to see parent over child, but then you picked the wrong type of child.
Okay, so it's a blend, so subtle smoke. Well, okay, so that has me ruling out the B&J blend, the barley nickel.
Okay. What's your reasoning for that?
Because I never got any smoke in the B&J blend. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think what that smoky component would be. I mean, that was Glenmorangie, it was Glenmurray. And then grain, I don't think that they were putting any Ardbeg in there, but maybe they were putting a couple drops in there. It would have been one that I'd say fill your boots because it was such an overlooked blend. Oh, geez, maybe it is the B&J blend. So it's a blend. Okay, can I ask for some hints?
Oh, absolutely. Fill your boots.
Is the blend still around?
I don't know.
Have you had it before?
Yes.
Was I the one who gave it to you?
Yes.
Did I try to fool you with it?
Not necessarily fool, but it was taste this and tell me what you think. And then it was, what do you think it might be? And you agreed that it was high quality, unloved, good price. Like everything Ian said here,
all right.
you have said.
So it really sounds like the B&J blend then.
Well,
but without the smoke.
Unless you've got any other ideas.
Well, another idea is Black Bottle. But I would argue that Black Bottle during 2010, that's when it was in a bit of a downturn. It wasn't the great bottle that it was.
Well, and I would draw your attention back to this statement. I have seen a very lovely pre-war decanter in a Highland shooting lodge. Really, this whiskey's natural habitat, right? That is definitely not Black Bottle.
Yeah, definitely not Black Bottle. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. A pre-war decanter. All right. So when I think of the decanted blends I've had, VAT 69, but I don't think I've ever poured you Black VAT 69. God, this is so delicious to you, isn't it?
I just love it when the overconfident Joshua Hatton starts questioning everything. I'm very confident in my answer. Very confident. Nope, not a single malt. Oh no! I want it.
All right. I'm trying to think of the times where I've introduced a blend to you blindly. And the only time that comes to mind is this B&J malt, this B&J blend. But I don't know if the history of it. So I'm going to fall on that one. I'm going to say, is it the B&J blend?
Blank appears to be the unloved and it would seem unwanted runt of the litter in the Glenmorangie stable. Bailey Nickel Jarvie, B&J to its coterie of dedicated fans.
Wow.
There you go, sir.
There you go.
I never try to pull something completely out of left field for you. And when I saw the book just fell open to B&J when I was taking it off my shelf.
Wow.
I was like, that's it. That's the one. You've poured it for me blind at your house. You have been an absolute champion of this. And I thought those words would resonate with you. So the fact that little bit of smoke got mentioned, but listen to the nose. Fresh and floral with the Glenmorangie influence evident. Pears and grassy notes. very elegant, right? Like it's screaming B&J, and then that one place where he says, just a hint of smoke, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not B&J, like that's out of the equation, right? Just a hint, which you and I've had this conversation with some of the Michael Jackson tasting notes.
Like with the Imperial that he had, right? Smokiness.
Michael Jackson slides in that little bit of smoke, and you go, well, it's definitely not that, because that I've never had smoke in it. These guys have got that occasional little hint of smoke, just throwing it off.
Yeah.
So if it's the B of B&J, where is this? What's its number in 101?
If it's the B of B&J, then I would argue... Well, okay, so that's interesting, right? So you've got your Ardbegs, you've got your Ardmores, you've got your Auchentoshan's, you've got your... There's no Ardnahoe, so that's easy.
Yeah.
I don't think that he would use the A in Adelphi.
F to the Y to the I, he has Black Bottle in here.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Just saw it as I'm looking through the offerings.
Would this be number 6?
Oh gosh, no. No.
Is it am I too low or too high?
Far too low.
In 100, okay.
Yeah.
13.
Getting warmer.
18.
You're almost on fire.
19.
You are correct.
Hey,
first time. Yep. You have to go through Aberfeldy 21.
Oh, yeah.
Abelauer Abu Na. I probably shouldn't be naming this guy's order. He's probably meant to buy the book. We probably shouldn't just be reading the book on air. But yeah, let's say that here's the first 3, since I've given you the first 2. Aberfeldy 21-year-old, Abelauer Abu Na, and Amrut Fusion. 3 crackers.
Oh, gosh. I all 3 of those, absolute crackers. No doubt about it. Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So yeah, I thought B&J would be perfect for that little game, because it would give you a chance to say, so the 2 questions you asked me that I was unable to answer because B&J is still not on my radar. Did anything sell? And is B&J still available?
It's not still available. Yeah, I don't.
It has gone the way of the dodo. It didn't get a new owner.
Yep. Just gone.
So the sale of Glenmurray really did in B&J?
Potentially. I just, it's an LVMH thing, right? And like B&J was never a luxury blend, right? And if you're going to go the route of luxury, I think LVMH has done what they can for luxury for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. Without an extreme overhaul, I don't know that you could luxury or premiumatize the B&J blend. It was just the solid drinker with a lot of writing on the label.
Yeah. Wine Searcher is not showing any bottles available in the United States.
Yeah, I'd almost argue that likely got put to bed somewhere in the 20-teens.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Yeah. Do you have any unopened bottles that you managed to squirrel away? You've only got the open that you poured for me?
That's gone.
That's gone also?
Actually,
wow,
I think you've got your memory scrambled a bit. I poured that for you in 2011 at Oran Moor.
Oh.
So I poured that for you, and then I did the Lafroy Gavulin pour, where I had them do the 50-50 of Lagavulin 16, Lafroy 18. And so that was my night of tricking you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I recall that. Didn't we have Springbank Tokai cask that night as well?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and that was that at that time. That was the controversial one. That was the one where people loved it or hated it, and I thought that was a cracker of a whiskey.
Well, I am very pleased to say I have an unopened bottle of that, thanks to you.
Oof! That's right. I got you a bottle.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Yeah,
you're very welcome.
All right, so there you go. That was a little last minute pivot because of your cold and cough, and so sea bass, blind barrels. We do still have to get to the final sample from all of you. We do still think of you all often, and I'm excited to get that final one tasted with you, Joshua.
Same. Yep.
And see how we can embarrass ourselves on that day.
Well, Jason, thanks to you for that. That was a lot of fun. Thanks again to Dave Broom for allowing us to record a fourth conversation with him. To everybody at Jack Rose and all of the good people that we met there. I'm not going to make a list, but you know who you are.
It would be a long, incomplete list.
It would be a long, incomplete list. But it really was a wonderful time and a good excuse to get down to DC again. I mentioned before, I'll mention it again. We are going to be recording a spousal podcast takeover episode on Thanksgiving. So you have until the day before Thanksgiving to send in your questions at onenationunderwhiskey.com, info at singlecasknation.com. Get those questions in. And that's it. Jason, that's all I have. Do you have any more?
Well, go ahead and feel better.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Go nap, go rest, go combine more high-octane scotch with over-the-counter pharmaceuticals.
Oh my gosh, I'm flying high right now.
But # consume responsibly.
Okay. Cheers, everybody.
Chin chin.